you. It's an honor to be here. Um, I love seeing all your faces here on a Thursday evening. So let me start by sharing my screen. And then I'll put it in presentation mode. I think we're there. Are we in presentation mode?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah,
That's what I see.
Yes.
I have to make this screen a little smaller and put it off to the side here. Okay, now I think I'm all organized. All right, so we're here to talk about the science of empathy, practical ways to foster innovation. So I want to start off with a little bit of background about myself and why I'm passionate about this topic. So in September of 2019, I retired, and here I am with Dean Leffingwell, who's one of the most influential and empathetic leaders I've ever had in my career. And for some, retirement means slowing down and traveling and enjoying life. But my experience has been very different in retirement. First, it's given me the time to focus on what I'm passionate about and what I value. And it's also given me that space to reflect on my life and what's happened and how those experiences have shaped my life and those passions and what I truly value. So I wanted to share with you some of the early experiences I've had in my life that have shaped who I am and how those true passions have unfolded. So when I was 14, the boy I had a deep crush on was killed in a motorcycle accident. He was unintentionally hit by an oncoming car, and being 14, I sobbed in my bedroom for probably months. When I was 21, my deepest friend, my older brother, committed suicide. And recovering from that loss took years, if I don't actually think I've ever recovered from that one. I've lost my grandparents, my mother, my father. I've been through 2 divorces. I've lost my dear friend to pancreatic cancer only 9 weeks after she was diagnosed. And I've had the honor of being next to some of these dear souls before and after their passing. Now, what I reflect on that is that I feel deeply for those I've loved, and for all those around me, almost too deeply, to the point of it sometimes being detrimental to my own health. But the learnings that I have that are ingrained in my brain start with the fact that we are impermanent. And they lead to a personal passion around, well, if we are impermanent, while we're here, what can I do to help people and humanity? And I think this has enabled that connection and the passion around empathy. And this is what we're here to talk about today. So what, if anything, does this have to do with scaling Agile and SAFE and the SAFE meetup? And in particular, this talk, we're here to talk about the science of empathy, practical ways to foster innovation. Well, here's what it has to do with all of that. Empathy is the single most misunderstood characteristic of human nature, but it's also one of the most powerful characteristics from an Agile perspective, and in particular, a safe perspective and using that customer-centric mindset. Now, here's why it's not easily understood. It's a construct of multiple components, and each of which is associated with our own brain network. And since the brain is still not thoroughly understood, neither is empathy. But recent research suggests that the neural circuitry is the key to understanding empathy and how it evolves in our brains. So I've introduced you to some of my personal life-shaping experiences, but more importantly, why should you care? Well, here's some of my real-time experiences with empathy, and maybe you can relate or feel some of them as well. I have a habit of overly taking on other people's feelings, their thoughts, their experiences, without even really wanting to, and kind of separating them from my own. So here's some examples. I can read a mood in a room or a person just by being there. I'm a pretty good listener, but I also get my feelings hurt pretty easily. That said, through my career, I've grown some pretty thick skin over these years. I'm an introvert. I like my time, my downtime, and I follow my intuition more than not. And if something doesn't feel good intuitively, well, I've learned that as a leader, I need to lean in. My instinct is always to.
Sorry, Jennifer, I think we lost you for a minute.
No, where do you think you lost me?
Okay.
Am I back?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
maybe my connection then is bad.
Go back here.
Okay, we're back. Awesome. Well, some of these traits that I talked about are powerful from an Agile coaching leadership perspective, but they're also extremely exhausting. After every large-scale transformation I've been involved with, and there's been quite a few from the financial industry all the way to aerospace, I need time to rest, and I require that downtime. But in reflection, I walk away with some of the most amazing and deep relationships with my clients, and some of whom are still part of my personal social network, and I cherish them. So the premise for this talk is that empathy is the root enabler for innovation. And it's also a critical driver around design thinking. And it's a neurological behavior that we should all attempt.
Lost you again.
Connection. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I am connected.
Just for a second, your voice crumble and then disappear.
Oh, okay, maybe if I.
That
Now we
happens
lost you
sometimes when your
again.
Wi-Fi is not reliable.
I was hoping it was good. I was testing it earlier. How's that?
Now it's fine.
You know, maybe if I turn off my my video, it'll help a little bit. Why don't I do?
It can.
Yeah, let's try that. Go here. And turn it. Give me a second here. Let me stop sharing my screen so I can see all my controls. There we go. Now I'll turn off my video. Well, maybe that'll help a little more. Are you guys still there?
Yeah, we are here.
All right, good. Love these little technological challenges we have here. All right. So I was talking about empathy and how empathy is the root enabler for innovation, but it's also a key driver around design thinking, and it's a critical neurological behavior that we should all attempt to connect with, or in my case, manage, if we truly want to continue to build products and solutions that people love. And we can use empathy and design thinking to become more socially responsible in our enterprise through having a global, holistic, empathetic view of our planet and the amazing gifts that it provides for us to live and to thrive. So let's start with a statement around empathy being the root enabler for innovation, and it starts with design thinking. So according to who you follow or research, there's a 4, 5, or 6 stage process to organize your data to deliver something of value. And these stages use divergent and convergent ideation patterns to continue to validate or invalidate the value delivered. The process always starts with
Gone. Yeah, same here. I'm not hearing anything.
oh, frustrating. Let me try one more thing here. Everybody's muted. Maybe, actually, let's mute everybody except Mark. Do you think that'll help?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll mute myself if you
Okay.
like.
All right, and let's mute Sylvie. Okay, let's see if that gives me more bandwidth. Here we go, back to sharing. And presenting one more time. So we talked about design thinking beginning with empathy, but there's a challenge here. If we all want to use design thinking to help with innovation, and it starts with empathy to fuel design thinking, how do we get all of our people on board with empathy? And more importantly, truly using customer centricity to optimize innovation to better meet our customer needs. So let's close our eyes here and take a moment to breathe on that. How do we get all of our people on board with empathy so that we can continuously innovate? Well, I'll give you a big tip here. One key aspect is agency. So let's look at the philosophy of agency for a moment. Agency is one of the most important elements in developed empathetic thinking. It's the ability to think and act using cognitive reasoning across the brain, the mind, and relationship. In short, it's your personal internal autopilot. It's deeply rooted in two primary aspects of human condition. The first is the level of ability an individual has to interact in an authentic fashion with other people, empathy with others, as well as a deep knowing of yourself. In other words, how well you know yourself, your own behavior, and your own actions. So why is this important? Well, there's many benefits, and I'm going to pull on a few that directly relate to this talk. By knowing yourself, you're empowered to see things that you were once blind to. For example, your people, your social networks, and your enterprise. Now, this has been quite the evolution for myself, and I can honestly tell you, in the 90s, I was a product manager, and I hadn't connected with agency at that point. And my team viewed me as a type A, aggressive personality, and I was driven by getting my product to market. Now that egocentric behavior blinded me from the people and the teams that were supporting getting that value out the door. Now, one of my mentors and colleagues, Chuck Pozeski, he's Empathy Guru. You can go to Empathy Guru and read his blog. In one of his white papers, he writes, how do we develop agency in our leaders and our people to sense the circumstance, reflect, learn, and figure out what the right thing is? Are we still there, Mark?
Yes, we're good.
Okay.
We can still hear you. All good.
Good. I heard somebody talking, so I thought I'd check in. Now, a lot of what Chuck is saying here is that in order to know the right thing to do as leaders, we first need to know ourselves. So a little story here, I had one large global systems integrator that was launching a SAFE program, and during the launch, the senior vice president was preparing to get on stage and provide the vision for the program. One of the first things we need to do to get people aligned around where we're going. And the vision video was an incredible animation of the end goal, which happened to be sending people into orbit, into outer space. But there was one aspect of his visionary speech that made me pretty nervous. He was going to communicate to the audience of aerospace engineers and architects and developers that the way they were getting compensated was through single lines of code. Now you're probably giggling right now because we know that's not how we negotiate contracts. And while the right thing to do would be to do some renegotiation around value, not SLOC, single lines of code. But needless to say, he did have the agency to not communicate this, as it would have had a tremendous negative impact on the outcomes of the program. So agency and how you show up as a leader could make or break a successful idea or innovation, and more importantly, the social dynamics that's building it. So let's look at some of the social dynamics. The experiences I've had with agency and how I've shown up in a scaled Agile environment have been pretty eye-opening. That product manager job I had in the 90s, while full of learnings and created a foundation for where I went, didn't generate the lifelong relationships that are still with me today. However, after putting in the personal development work around agency, and for me it was the practice of yoga, for you it might look completely different, and evolving in my career, in the 2000s, I can see that personal impact to the social networks in my career. Because most of those relationships that were created after 2000 are still dear and friends to me, even in the time I am now in retirement. So my hypothesis is that it's because I've been a part of a social network of Agilists, just like you, that have the same values, and coupled with the personal work that I've done around agency. So let's talk a little bit more about values. I mentioned the fact that we are connected through our Agile values. The book Spiral Dynamics, first published in 1996, demonstrates how any human being can begin to change their empathetic views to eventually and hopefully help change their world. Now, if you haven't read the book, Spiral Dynamics, I'm just going to give you a little bit of overview. You'll probably akin it to Don Reinertsen's Principles of Product Development Flow, that you kind of have to read it a few times to get it ingrained in your brain. So I'll break it down a little bit for you. Spiral Dynamics classified a total of 8 levels of increasingly complex human value systems, or what they reference to value memes, consisting on a set of worldviews, preferences, and purposes. And it's through these value systems, groups and cultures structure their societies, and then the individuals integrate within those societies. So in short, Spiral Dynamics links the growth of societies through a series of stages that governed both the people and their social structures as they moved up that never-ending neurological evolution that forms empathy. Now, there's 2 parts of Spiral Dynamics that are super important. And the first is the idea that there can be an orderly progression of values, that people can start at a point of selfishness and low responsibility, as perhaps I did early in my career, and some of us have, and move past that to shared goals and purpose, and a coupling to a higher cause. So yes, we can, and we do evolve. And we see this in our Agile community. We all share a collective mindset around agility, and this brings us together. And we also see it as we battle our social challenges with COVID and human equality around the world. Now, second is that given values are associated with a given social structure, and the values of that social structure drive the outcomes that people in that social structure want. So for example, if you organize everyone around a particular value or value stream, as we talk about in SAFE, and that value stream has a vision and a strategy that's widely communicated and understood, the social structure will evolve to support that vision. Now, if there's any misalignment, and for example, the motivation isn't around value, the motivation is perhaps money rather than the health and safety of humanity, and everyone's individually motivated, then that egocentric behavior becomes the norm. And we see this today in some of our global political settings. Now in January, the Scaled Agile Framework released version 5 of the Big Picture, and I hope you've all read up on it because they've done a phenomenal job in providing the guidance on all of the competencies that help an organization become more lean and eventually achieve business agility. And one of the things that I'm particularly fond of is this concept of the dual operating system. Now, SAFE illustrates as we scale, we absolutely need to leverage the benefits of a hierarchy. But it's not the hierarchy that provides or develops the network or the social structure. It's actually the alignment around value that influences that social network that facilitates the flow of value. In essence, it's that connective tissue that makes safe work. It's the social fabric. It's the empathetic connective tissue that can leverage the people's knowledge and their skills and their collective values, use design thinking to better address new innovative opportunities.
Sorry, Jennifer, can I ask a question if you don't mind?
Yeah.
If you go back to the previous slide, what I understand is the empathy and the social connection that we are creating between the network of value and the functional hierarchy is that kind of personal relation that we are building with our customers. Am I right on that?
It's the personal relationship you're building with your customers, but it's also the social network that you're building around the Agile release train that's aligned around the value that's delivered and also the common values that those people learn to evolve. So it's a combination of all of that.
So as if what you're saying is how we're going to bring life to the hierarchy throughout this. We are not only focusing on delivering value, we are bringing another dimension to that kind of dual operating system or the second operating system.
Well, I wouldn't look at it as another dimension. What I'm looking at is really the kind of the dynamics around the social network that comes together to deliver the value. So it's the people on the Agile release train and the social network that's sharing the information, sharing the knowledge, getting to know each other, and creating that empathetic connection with each other and the customer as well.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to add another dimension to all this. So here's the challenge as Agile leaders. So how do you foster and grow this empathetic social fabric so that you can better innovate? Well, as leaders in an Agile organization, I think we all agree it's a mindset, and it's a mindset based on a series of values and principles. And I won't go into all of them because we know there's at least 4 values and there's dozens of principles if you count the manifesto and SAFe. And now there's 7 competencies to achieve business agility. And then if you add lean, there's the 5 principles of lean manufacturing and so on. But I will focus on one and the benefits around the one. And the one I want to focus on is organize around value, the 10th SAFe Lean Agile principle. So this principle guides the enterprises to align their development efforts around their end-to-end flow of value. So Mark, back to your point, while it leverages the benefits of a hierarchy, it also provides the foundation to build that empathetic network that's directly organized around value and eventually the people's values that support it. Now this network assembles the people who need to work together and then fosters the information flow as well as the knowledge transfer required to truly make them a learning organization that can continuously innovate and deliver that value. Now, in my career, I've had the opportunity to organize around value and use design thinking to understand the problem we're trying to solve, and then apply empathy to innovate and create value for our customers. Now, I want to bring something that hopefully you can all relate to, especially in today's times. I'm sure you've had that feature or capability that's never been developed. It's new technology. We just haven't built it yet. Well, I had one some years ago, and it involved developing an over-the-air capability through a wireless protocol called Zigbee, which is now the standard for the open IoT, the Internet of Things. But now this is a mainstream solution, but at the time, it had never been done. So this could have been an extremely stressful situation for our Agile release train, but using design thinking and diverging and converging on the problem and continuously innovating, we were able to solve the problem while keeping the customer needs in the forefront. Our empathetic network of software and firmware and hardware engineers, and if you've ever worked with all those folks together, you know sometimes we have a little bit of friction. They worked together to develop and to deliver the technology, and eventually it became the standard for that protocol. Now, none of this could have happened without having the right people organized around value, that could innovate, evolve, and share their knowledge of the problem space and deliver something that had never been invented before. That was one of the most powerful experiences that I've ever had in my career. So let's go deeper into the science of empathy, and in particular, how you can foster this form of innovation. So we'll start with looking at the science of Frans de Waal's work on mapping empathy to neural function. And this is one of my favorite metaphors about talking about kind of how empathy evolves in the human brain. His pyramid around empathy evolution includes emotional contagion, concern for others, and perspective taking. Now, I just want to note that as all these behaviors evolve in your brain, they're nested within each other. So the first is emotional contagion. It's also known as mirroring behavior. Most commonly known, I yawn, you yawn, I cry, you cry. It's a very powerful initiator of a larger cognitive action called modeling behavior, which is the root for role models. So initiation starts here. It's the deepest automatic part of the brain. It's extremely important and deeply embedded in our minds. But with this alone, the results for the empathetic leader trying to communicate complexity and strategy, it's likely going to fall short of the global expectations. So the second is concern for others. Now, my favorite quote is from Maya Angelou, and she says, "I've learned that people will forget what you've said, and people will forget what you've done, but people will never forget how you've made them feel." Most people associate this with empathy. It's the feeling of experience that exists when two or more people sit down and communicate through trauma or a happy life experience. Now, the third is perspective taking or cognitive empathy. It's theory of the brain. It's also known as rational empathy. And it's the ability to gather information from words, from emotions, from facial gestures, as well as body language to understand someone else's perspective, and then make a predictive assessment on how someone else thinks. Design thinking. Rational empathy is scaffolded with the below, along with the different levels of the neural function that's associated with it. Now, this scientific behavior is reinforced by the results of face-to-face planning. Now, I know we're all planning in a virtual world right now, but the rational empathetic experiences I've had with launching international programs and bringing the people together, whether virtually or not, are life-changing. I had one multi-location program launch where a chief architect came to me in tears after the launch and said, "Thank you for bringing 150 years of collective knowledge together. I now know how to better connect with my peers." Now, I watched this particular person go through the emotions of evolving where he was and connecting through perspective taking and rational empathy over the evolution of that program. It was truly heartwarming. Now, techniques for rational empathy can be taught, but in order for real development, rational empathy must be practiced, just as that architect in our program did. He really put an effort into practicing putting himself in the shoes of his customer and the people around him. Now, before we continue, let's pause and breathe and soak this in. How do we show up? As humans, how do we show up? After we've identified our value streams, if you were to organize around value and thus grow your own super powerful human neural network around value, how would you do it? I have a few people. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in. I might need your help, Mark.
Connect with them in the deeper level.
Okay, yeah, connect with them. How would you do that?
It could be, as you mentioned earlier, like people remember how you made feel them, like what was the experience you had with that person.
I like it. I like it. Anyone else?
Listening to them.
Yeah, listening. Using your ear instead of your mouth to get into who they are and really put yourself in their shoes. I like that. Thank you, Samuel.
And sorry,
Personal,
sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, please.
From a tech perspective, start with their why.
Mm,
Why do they want this? How are you going to use it? What's the objective they're trying to achieve or reach?
beautiful. That could be a whole nother talk on itself, Simon
Yeah.
Sinek and the why.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And Mark, I think you had something.
So I find a way to connect with people and actually making difference with them through coaching, and coaching through connecting with them on a personal level rather than just professional level.
You bet. You bet. Getting to know who's in their family, what their home life is like, their pets, their children, you know, what their hobbies are. I love it. Thank you for that. All right. So I wanted to give you some precepts to help you evolve into a more empathetic organization and perhaps take some action around that. Now, empathy is both the mechanism and the measure of understanding and synchronizing with each other, just like we talked about. And even more powerful, empathy is the connection that allows knowledge transfer, design thinking, and shared ideas to cultivate and innovate. So in essence, empathy rules relationships, and all of that provides better outcomes for your enterprise and yourself. Now, I can think of those relationships that are not close to myself. And honestly, the ones that never evolved had what I call low bidirectional empathy, meaning that one of us practiced agency and empathy, and the other one, didn't. I had one leader who flat out just refused to connect and evolve and learn. And not only didn't he have empathy for the Agile learning organization we were trying to evolve, he didn't have the empathy for me and the work that I valued and delivered. And this was early on in Agile. And needless to say, after persisting for months, I moved on. And so I wanted to share some actions for increasing empathy that I have seen work well. So recognize that empathy must be practiced. Model the behavior you wish to see with your people and those throughout your organization, as well as your peers. So encourage employees to socialize outside their value streams, and if you can, have all employees participate appropriately in direct customer contact. Now, a great example of this are the SAFE conferences, the SAFE summits. Since they started in 2013, every employee is invited and encouraged to attend. And then in your one-on-ones with your employees, you can experiment with active listening, as Mark said, and dialogue exercises to increase your reception and feedback skills. So first with the people that you trust and care for, you can experiment with them. And then perhaps with people that maybe you don't interact with on a regular basis. So there's many tools and techniques you can use, and I like Peter Senge's 5th Discipline Field Book. And one of the ones that I called out the action learning cycle and dialogue. These can help you develop those critical reflection skills. So increasing empathy with others requires that higher level of personal insight and reflection that we talked about. So make sure you're practicing agency. It is hard to give love when you first don't love yourself. Now, the second one is for people to open up and connect in a meaningful way. The environment has to be safe. So I'm sure you've had those leaders that practiced safety, and they cared for you, and they demonstrated that you as a human being mattered. So be that leader that we all want to follow. Observe those attributes and be that leader. Companies that cultivate this type of safety create the conditions for an empathetic connection that are in turn the foundation for an environment that's rich with creativity and innovation. So here's some actions for both ensuring safety in your environment and increasing it. Transparency and honesty. So make sure you have transparent and honest communication of information from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top as much as you possibly can. Establish yourself co-equally as a human being and a professional. Now, this means that you sometimes have to let people know that you're willing to connect with them even when you're having a bad day, and showing those emotions. That's completely fine. And understand and be aware of body language. This one's most important for me. It's one of the first things that people assess when deciding if people and the situations are safe. So if your organization chart represents the roles and reporting guidelines as a scaled Agile framework does, and people generate their own connections, empathy can thrive and your culture can emerge. Even when the social structure is that typical hierarchical stack, if it's surrounded by a network and culture that values different people for their differences and encourages its members to connect outside their own little nodes, with time, that empathetic organization will evolve. And over time, that principle of reinforcement, that the organizational behavior influences the people to create coherent behavior, and in return, the people will in a self-similar fashion influence their organization in that ongoing feedback loop. So some ideas here, flatten as much as possible. While it's impossible in a large organization to have a completely flat organization, think about factors like Dunbar's number, which shows that human groupings and relationships truly max out around 150 people. But the fewer levels of people who need to communicate have to jump, the better they are. You can also consider your physical architecture. Maybe not as important now, but does your office arrangement match a rigid hierarchy? In other words, how many stairs are there between you as the leader and the people that you have to connect with? And then finally, the reward system. Are people rewarded as individuals or teams? People are assigned to an organization as an individual, of course, but instead of giving individual bonuses and rewards, distribute them on as a flat a basis as you possibly can, recognizing that some people across an organization can often go unrecognized. And then back to spiral dynamics. The levels of empathy are tied to different values. So as we proceed up that empathetic evolutionary scale, our values change. And survival values might mean that, fighting your brother or sister over that glass of water or a candy bar, but on the complete other end of the spectrum, global holistic values create concern for people combating a devastating illness and human equality around the world. So using agency and reflective awareness and the self-empathy it requires means a divorce between the self and egocentric behavior and having a greater attempt at empathizing with others. This has a profound effect on your bottom line. It's good for your customers and it's good for this planet. Let's close our eyes and breathe one more time and focus on one of those precepts that might resonate or not resonate with you. What if you can't do it all? It sounds like a lot. What do you guys think? Where might you start?
Could be difficult in some organization with some leaders that are not very inclined to demonstrate or to even tolerate those kind of empathy, and they put pressure on people, etc. So it could be difficult when the managers or the leaders are not leading by example. Could be difficult. I'm not saying that I experienced it, but we know some leaders are more in an empathy mode than others, and we can definitely experience that. Hierarchy and leaders are definitely doing a distinctive footprint there, so it could be difficult sometimes.
Absolutely.
So perhaps training empathy to all leaders or at business schools could be a way to start.
I like it. I like how you think, and also modeling the behavior that you expect to see. Using that principle of reinforcement. If they're not showing it, why won't we could show it? Start there. Good feedback. Yeah.
This is Sylvie again. And I know I'm going to sound extremely harsh, but understand that I have a finance and economics background. Pre-pandemic, I would have said, yep, I'm there. And we need, when I say we, I'm speaking about the Agile community. We need to be the evangelist of this message with, as Jérôme was saying, you know, mostly the executives. Because yes, some of them are there, a lot of them are not there, okay? But post-pandemic, because of the economic downturn, global and in certain enterprises more than others, it is going to be extremely difficult. Why? Because some of these companies are basically on an oxygen mask right now.
Yeah.
And keep in mind also that for the majority of them who are, and I'm speaking more so public traded companies. Why? Because the shareholders and the investors and the analysts are giving them a break now, but they're going to start to look for results sometime soon. And as the majority of them are January to December fiscal year, keep in mind that first quarter was probably not closed or very high level. Why? Because we're right smack into the pandemic. End of June, okay, a little bit calmer. I mean, I'm in Quebec here, okay? So a little bit calmer. Here, the majority of people are still teleworking. So come September, okay, where we have basically the third quarter, trust me, some of these executives, it's not that they don't want to, it's just that the priority is not going to be there.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned about that because, yeah, I agree. I think the community had started to make a lot of nice inroads where what I call more mindful and conscious leadership across all the board. But I'm very much afraid that in French, we say, chasser le naturel, il revient au galop. You're bound to come back to your old habits, basically,
Yeah.
especially when you're in survival mode. So
Yeah.
my question to you is, how do we position this? Because I think our message is going to have to be different because we're just adding another element on a very long list of items that these companies are going to have to review, reassess, make decisions on. And that's not only in IT, by the way, okay? In all spectrum of the organization, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so I like to go back to that continuous learning culture. We will all go back to our old ways. It's human nature. I mean, if we don't have the coaching or the knowledge or the mindset or the willingness to learn and evolve and have that continuous learning culture, we'll go back to our old ways. And I think personally, I would look to my coaches, my mentors, those that can help us see beyond, the money of it all, and take those baby steps. Start with yourself, use agency. Any small step you can take to becoming an empathetic individual will help create that foundation within your enterprise. And it's hard. You might get stuck for a while. You might have to iterate and you might have to look back in order to go forward. I can relate to that, Sylvie. Thank you.
Okay, cool. As I said, I'm extreme, and again, this is my work. And from what I'm reading, I am extremely concerned because when you say, the money wouldn't be the priority. If it's not, it's because and I'm speaking countrywide here, not only Quebec.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's going to hurt a lot.
Yeah, I get it. Okay?
So I love empathy. I'm all for the soft skills, but shit, pardon my expression, at the end of the day, if we can't pay the bills and if companies start to fold, and then we have another element, which is called the US, which is our biggest trading partner, and they're not handling the pandemic at all. So at one point, you can't trade with a state who's in a total state of confinement because they can't handle their own sanitary issues. So as I said, I value your ideology, but shoot, I'm afraid that we're going to go back to the old habits because we're going to be needing the oxygen mask for a while. So, but I trust me, I hope I'm wrong.
Well, your feedback is quite a good segue into my next section.
Go ahead.
So here we go. Here's where it gets real, and especially
I
today.
just wanted to ask a question, if you don't mind.
Please.
Janet. Yeah, I just wanted really to ask you, how would you handle people who would say, well, please respect my boundaries, especially when you want really then to establish some relationship within the release train between people. But some people are so introvert and they want their boundaries to be respected. How do you handle that?
So true. And I've had so many of those folks that are like, look, there's no way I want you in my world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No way. And, I would just kind of step back and observe, listen, look for opportunities to connect. And, they might not happen for a while. This isn't something that happens overnight. It might even take years to crack that nut. But just watch. Don't push. Just watch and see when those opportunities arrive. I've been one of those people too. Yeah, I don't want you in my world.
That's right.
I'm not going to share. I'm an introvert, but then it evolves. It absolutely evolves. So hang tight with those folks. They're human too.
Jennifer, if you allow me to share, so I think I feel the pain in both the question. I could share personal experience. When that happened, actually, I didn't take that personal. And this has happened not only in the Agile restraint. Even when you are in an Agile team, someone tell you, like, what the hell you're doing? Why you want me to leave what I'm doing and come here? I'm not into it. I don't want to be there. Whether he's an executive or a team member or whoever in the team. And I think we always have to look at what's behind the sentences that they're saying. And this will give you the depth of understanding. And I think this is one of the aspects of being the coach for the team, the coach for the executive. I don't know if that would answer some of those clarification or not. I leave it to you, Jennifer, to that.
No, that's beautiful. I like it. All right, let's move on to the crux here. So this is where it gets real, and especially with everything we've been talking about. It doesn't stop with your organization. We're here because we've been blessed by a planet that can sustain life, and as we know it, our world's in jeopardy. And somebody gifted me this book from Lynn Twist, and it's called The Soul of Money. And what she says is, for too long, the economy has been viewed as a separate from ecology, but nature has showed us that the two are inextricably joined. In fact, the economy is a subset of ecology. Social responsibility has become a huge aspect for the entire planet and the economy that takes from it every day. So, what steps can we take to make our organization more socially responsible and practice empathy beyond the organization at the local, the regional, and the global levels? So I'll give you a little problem statement here. According to PwC, the combined market cap of the world's 100 largest companies topped $21 trillion last year. Lynn Twist, in her book, would recognize that amount of money holed up in those organizations as a blocker of flow. And if we've read Don Reinertson's book, Principles of Product Development Flow, he would hate that. And even more so, how can we help our organizations rebalance some of this wealth, create the agency that inspires companies to give back, not just through the wealth taxes that some governments would tout, but through the sheer desire and passion about our earth and the empathetic will of our organizations. Now, given the time and the space and the evolutionary practice we've been discussing, we can approach the world with this collective mindset. We're starting to see some of our enterprises do the same. So just imagine, we're not there yet, we know that, but imagine if all of our enterprises gave back a portion of their profits to humanity and the health of this earth. Imagine if this was knitted into the purpose of each and every organization down to the employee level. Now, there's hope, and some enterprises are aligning to this global holistic value, as well as adapting to change. And never in our lifetime has the alignment of global holistic values and our agile value of adapting to change been more important than now. And there are many companies that I've had the honor of working with that have done this in many different ways. And I'm going to call out two. Scaled Agile is a member of Pledge 1%, and they believe that all companies have the capacity to give. And you can be a driver of this movement as well and shift the culture to help companies stand at the forefront of both economic and social change. Now, how they do this is giving back 1% of their profits. They decentralize the giving down to the employees, the teams, and the trains. Each employee has the opportunity to donate some time as well as money. Each team gets to do the same, and the entire value stream spends time volunteering as well as donating the collective profits of the company to a global cause. And there's also a movement around Series B corporations. Now, if you've read Agile Software Requirements, Tendril, which was the case study in the book, is now a Series B corporation called Uplight. And Series B corporations are businesses that meet the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance, public transparency, and a legal accountability to balance profit and purpose. And B corporations are accelerating that global culture shift to help redefine the success in business and build a more inclusive and sustainable economy. Now, there's over 3,000 companies, Series B companies worldwide, that are committed to using business as a force for environmental and social change. Now,
how those companies are being classified are as a Series B?
Yeah, so you have to go through the due diligence to do that.
Right, okay.
Pull up the Wikipedia pages on how to do that. But more and more companies are aligning around that higher purpose because they are taking from the world and sustaining our economy by using our global resources. So they see that. And then personally, back to why the heck am I doing this? I'm retired, but my purpose is to spend the rest of my years giving back to the community and this amazing planet. And I couldn't have gotten there without all these wonderful experiences that have blessed me and the social networks that have helped me evolve as a human being. Now, this picture is of a horse named Gamuza, and she's a former polo horse. She's now a therapy horse at a nonprofit that I work called Rocky Mountain Riding Therapy. I donate my time here. We assist individuals with physical and cognitive or emotional challenges to help reach their fullest potential. And this, I can't go through all of my giving back activities. This is just one example of how I'm utilizing my time. But back to why we're here on this earth, knowing that we're all impermanent. What can we do? So I've given you some ideas, but I'll summarize them for you. Start by leveraging your people, right? So by design thinking, start with empathy and understand that problem you're trying to solve and the why. Practice agency. Allow the time and space for innovation and ask powerful questions of your people. What can we do to not only deliver value for our customers, but show them that we're committed to that global cause? So this talk, thank you for letting me be here. It's been one of my greatest joys. It's also the reason that I've come to you today. I can't bring back any of those beautiful souls that I started with in the beginning of my presentation, but now the purpose in retirement is to give back, to help the people who live today. And while I'm here, just try to leave it in a better state. Now, I'm just one person and all of you are just one person. So how the heck can we do that? Well, for me, It's just showing up here and sharing this message and continuing to innovate and evolve this message. It might have been a little rocky, and I look to you to help me evolve this message. So sometime in your next virtual meeting, turn to the person next to you and just ask, what inspires you to innovate in your life? How do you evolve your agency? How do you connect? And how can you begin? So thank you. Thank you so much. I have a few resources to share with you here, some sources, and love to open it up for more Q&A. And maybe I can get off this and share my face again.
Thanks a lot,
question-
Jennifer. Thanks
Sorry.
for everyone who asked question. And Sylvie, please go ahead.
Sorry, my question is non-presentation related, but I'm a horseback rider. Where's this place that you volunteer?
Yeah, it's right in Boulder, Colorado. It's a nonprofit, and they've been in business for 25 years. And they do everything from cognitive to physical therapy, voice therapy. It has been one of the most profound experiences I've had watching these humans that are challenged in many different ways. You know, some of them can't even speak. Some of them can't even hold themselves up. And to watch them evolve and connect with the horse has been so profound, and they're actually evolving the program to be even more than just for disabled people, to be more towards our community of health providers and first responders, you know, who come onto the scene in a time of trauma, to help them deal with situations and read the situation before they get there, because the horses are such good feedback on what to do. So anyway, that's my personal love too. So thank you for.
Were you a writer before?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll tell you, as a child, or as a young adult, one of the things my parents did to keep me out of trouble, really, was to get me a horse to work with all day, every day, all summer long, and it worked because I connected with the horse. That was my purpose. I learned. I evolved. It was one of those steps along the way that helped me be who I am.
Yeah, no, for a child, it's an amazing, first of all, the connection, but also the discipline, because to take care of a horse, you know, I mean, the minute that you slip, it's like, so anyway, we could talk all night, but I thought that was fantastic.
I've been thrown, I've been rolled over on, believe me, all of that, and I'm still here.
I was at another, and this will make everybody laugh. I was at another virtual meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we had an icebreaker, and I thought the suggestion was cute. We went into breakout rooms on Zoom, and then, so as an icebreaker, they said, talk about an image that you have that every time it comes to your mind, it makes you laugh. And mine is as follows. In the middle of a heat wave in July, as I was cleaning stalls, I slipped in manure, which was not exactly, I mean, it was fresh and hot. And I remember literally, my brother used to own an equestrian farm. He was an amazing writer. I remember literally went, oh shit, and screaming. And he's at the other end of the barn and he goes, sis, what happened? I said, oh, Mike, I'm such in deep shit. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I'm in deep shit.
Live on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. No, there wasn't any social media at the time. But to be honest with you, my reaction was, oh, well, it happened. This is part of the job. And I literally came out of the stall, hosed myself down under a shower, and then changed and went right back into it. And, you know, that was it. But it's the image that if ever I want to, because I can see myself. And I remember sliding going, oh, God, that's it. I'm in it. And, you know, it happened in the flick of a second. So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome.
Yeah. But so if ever you're thinking of something funny and you want to laugh at somebody, by all means, go ahead. It works every time.
That's funny.
I mean, it was from the tip of my hair to the tip of my toes.
So, Jennifer, I just wanted to ask you, you are still tied to SAFE. I see a picture of SAFE in your wall.
I am. I mean, I'm still a safe fellow. I still
Yeah, okay.
you know,
Yeah.
contribute. I'm a guide. I help with the intellectual property. Once it's in there, it's hard to
Yeah.
not, it's part of my DNA as well. But I'm using it in a different way.
All right. Okay. I met with you several times. I don't know if you remember me anyway. So
I can
in
only
the
see half of your face.
sorry, you cannot see my face. Can you see my face right now? So we met in the Business Agility and the Agile Alliance conference a few times. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Try to remember everybody, but it's that.
I know, but yeah, it's no, it's a nice talk anyway. Empathy is very important, but it's very hard then to practice empathy, as you mentioned. Well, you have then to learn to be to be empathetic, but it's very hard.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I have a question, Jennifer. First of all, thank you for your presentation. It's very insightful and refreshing to go in these subjects often don't overlooked in our organization and in our corporate work, etc. So I wanted to ask you if the COVID, do you find it difficult to connect with people, to have empathy with people, and especially reading the body language could be difficult. I consider myself not a bad body language reader, and I used to take the temperature of the room, etc. Easily, but now I'm giving safe training. I'm doing often conference with people. I'm trying to advise people in agility, etc. In my job all day, but I find it difficult to connect with people, and sometimes you are with them in the conference in the in the meeting, but next you push the button and they disappear. You don't have any space to connect when people are, let's say, alone in their desk. Or so how do you connect? How do you still have the connection with people when you are just linked at certain time, and often the video feed is not very good, so you haven't any reading on people really. So how do you find it yourself, and how do you perhaps advise to go further with these difficulties?
Well, there's a few things I'd like to pull on. One is it's absolutely more complex now. There's no two ways about it. We can't connect in the same way that we did before. So when you're teaching and you are, on Zoom, I'd recommend having more than one facilitator. I know SAFE recommends two instructors. It's really helpful to have just more people facilitating, watching what's happening in the rooms and bringing them to fruition and bringing them to the forefront and having that. I'll be honest, some of my social networks are struggling and they're breaking down because we can't get together anymore. We're not allowed, and we have kind of made our little people that we can connect with smaller, not by choice, but through this pandemic. So it's taken more effort. People in my personal groups are like, let's do a Zoom, let's sit outside 10 feet apart, but then, you're still limited to 10 people. So you're limited by this whole pandemic. So I guess my recommendation is to still try to hold on to them. They'll be there when we do come back, and just make sure, even if it's a text message or a WhatsApp or something, to keep that little string going, because we will come back. I don't know how long it's going to take, but don't let them go, because you'll want them there when we do come back.
But sometimes agile coach were more emphatic in my experience, and sometimes they were on the open space and everyone was there, and sometimes we could read someone was feeling not well. So how do you feel? What do you experience? Could we help you in the team, etc.? And not even if it's not our team, but agile coach were like that in my organization, and And this talk, this form of communication are totally absent. We are not seeing people other than connecting on a specific purpose. So it's quite difficult.
And I know it's more time with the people rather than
Yes.
managing the people. You know, more time, and we don't have infinite time, so that's why we have to leverage our network of Agile coaches to help us stay connected to our people. And you know, maybe it's easy for someone to fall off and notice when they do, and then figure out who can we connect with them to bring them back. It is more challenging. I'm open for more ideas around that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. You guys are great. What a great intimate audience.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks everyone for attending. And I think if we don't have any more questions, I appreciate your time, Jennifer. That was great, very passionate. I think everyone was connected with the subject to a certain level. Thank you. Remind everyone that we will have a great speaker next time. Just tune in, subscribe to our YouTube, subscribe to our social media, get updated, and we will be providing the link for this recording with the presentation. Thanks a lot, Jennifer. That was great. Thanks everyone for attending. Appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mark.
Jennifer.
Thank you.